Morning. How you doing? Welcome to the latest in WPNC series of top tips in rapid fire 20 minutes. So today we're going to be looking at no code and generative AI. Um, so before we get started, just a couple of usual bits of housekeeping. This is being recorded, so there will be a link circulated probably later today where you can share it if you want. We'll create a transcript as well, so that can make it easier to digest some of the content. And if you want a copy of the document that I'm going to be taking you through, then you can just email me and let me know. I'll share my email address at the end. So this is our agenda for our little rapid session. What is no code? And what are some of the benefits for charities in particular? Most interestingly, though, and where I'm going to spend most of my time is the combination of no code and generative AI. What are some of the possibilities there? I'll talk you through some of the considerations, and then suggest some things that you might want to try next, and leave a bit of time for Q&A at the end. So if you've got a question as we're going along, if you could just use the Zoom question feature, and then they'll all pop up in a little list, and I can go through them at the end if anybody's got any. So why are we talking about no code and generative AI? Well, why am I talking about it? There's this macro trend, isn't there, going on at the moment? So downward pressure on everybody's individual budgets, domestically or inside our organizations. So we're always looking for ways that we can try to do a bit more with less. And no-code tools are a very interesting way of doing that. And now with the advent of generative AI, the combination together actually gives us loads and loads of options. So let's do a little bit of terminology first, shall we? I don't want to assume anything about the general level of knowledge. This is maybe slightly more technical than your standard webinar. So what is no code first? In fact, if you've heard of no code, maybe you could just put a +1 or something like that in the chat, and that'll give me a vague idea of whether you've heard of it or not, and that might speed up my explanation of it. +1, +1, +1. Okay, we're getting a few. Fine. All right. I'm going to assume you know the basics of no code. I'm not going to dwell on it too much. So, what is no code? So, no code is really it's a term for a set of digital tools that help you build products and services without any technical skills. There is a caveat to that. It's not really for the totally non-technical. So these no-code tools will allow you to do a range of different things. I'll show you a few examples. You do need to have some basic understanding of the way the internet works in order to get the most out of them. So, but this can be really, really basic. You don't need to be able to code at all, hence the term no code. But understanding things like, there is typically a separation between the content and then the display or the styling, the form that that content takes. Understanding that there's content and then there's form, and they are separate things is useful to understand. And knowing things like what an API is come in very, very handy. So knowing that you can have an API which connects one service to another service, that allows you to get the most out of generative AI. We'll come on to that. So it's not for the totally non-technical. But this is really part of the overarching trend that we have in digital technologies. This is what has happened ever since the invention of computers. They start off being just for specialists, and you need really fairly hardcore technical understanding and knowledge and skills in order to be able to get the most out of them. But over time, the technology becomes democratized or commoditized, even sometimes you might say. So it becomes easier and easier for non-technical people to use it. And this generation of no-code tools allows us to do a lot of that. And it works across the spectrum. So we have no-code tools, and then we have low-code tools. Some people also talk about zero-code tools, but then I think we're getting a little bit too confused. Let's keep it nice and simple. So there's no-code tools and low-code tools. The short story here is no-code tools can be used by people with hardly any technical skill at all. If you can use Excel, you can build a product or a service using no-code tools. Low-code tools really are for developers. They help developers go much, much faster. They streamline an awful lot of the process, but you do need to know how to code in order to get the most out of it. So no-code tools, they allow you to do a whole bunch of different stuff. So you can make all sorts of custom things. I think one of the main benefits of no-code tools is that rather than buying something out of the box, you get to customize it to your particular needs or the needs of your particular team or organization or audience. And I was speaking to people from quite a range, different sorts of organizations and disciplines. So I'll try and keep this broad. So websites, you can use tools like Webflow, for example, which is a no-code tool, which allows you to build websites. Now, that sounds not terribly extraordinary. If you look at things like Wix or Squarespace or even WordPress to a certain extent, they've allowed people with very low or no technical skills to build websites for a long time. But you are kind of locked into their way of doing it. So if there is a set of templates or features that are provided by Squarespace, then you can use those, but probably not very many others, not easily anyway. Tools like Webflow allow you to build something which is totally customized to your needs and can have fairly advanced functionality, like being able to query databases of items. Say you've got a list of specialists around the country, for example, and you want to use your website in order to help people find their local specialist for a particular thing, then Webflow will allow you to do that without knowing any code at all. With all these examples, there are many like it. I'm just pulling out some of the ones which are probably most well known and the ones that I have personal experience of playing around with. Not biased at all. Mobile apps. Say you want to build a mobile app, there are all sorts of different tools that allow you to create one without any technical skill and publish it then off to the App Store or the Android store, wherever you want to publish it. And again, they operate exactly like a normal app would operate on your phone, and they can have varying degrees of functionality and content. And again, no technical skills required. You can build full-on web applications and SaaS. SaaS stands for software as a service, if you didn't know, although I imagine you probably do. So web applications are things which are, there's two main players in this space. We've got, let me try to zoom out here a little bit. So we've got Bubble and Flutterflow. Bubble and Flutterflow both operate in pretty much the same way. And they allow you, say you had an idea to build some kind of totally custom online application. You're creating a product which is going to be a really it's going to be very, very useful to all of your end service users. It helps them maybe manage their medication, or it maybe helps them do something which is non-trivial. You're not just providing information, you're providing functionality, actual software. And Bubble and Flutterflow allow you to just kind of drag and drop components and very, very easily create fully functional bits of online software, which also work on a mobile phone. There's probably too many examples to be able to explain for this, and I will go into some more concrete examples when I'm talking about how you combine this with generative AI. There are no code tools for developing business software. Say you need to do something internally, like so Betty Blocks. I think it's got to be the best name of any kind of SaaS application. So Betty Blocks allows you to build business applications, which might exist just inside your organization. So it might be something like a system for booking leave for all of your staff. It could be something for analyzing the success of your latest campaign, for example, in real time, automatically. Get those end of campaign reports automatically generated. All sorts of business software. And then integration and automation. This is probably the important one when we start talking about generative AI. There are no code tools. There's two main ones that allow you to integrate various different services and then automate how they operate together. So Zapier is one and Make is another. Make used to be called Integromat, if there's anybody very technical here going, never heard of Make before. So what these tools allow you to do is to join various different services together and automate how they operate. For example, you might have somebody who gives you a donation, maybe on your website. You could link your website or your donations platform to Zapier, and then Zapier can link to maybe your CRM system or your internal comms system, like Teams, for example. And so every time somebody gives a donation, Zapier is told, and then Zapier sends a notification to Teams saying, we've had a new donation. Or it will look for that person in your CRM system and it will update their record automatically saying they just gave a donation for X amount and they came through this particular campaign that we were running. It's a very simple example. There's all sorts of other stuff that you can do with these automations and integrations, and I'll get onto some of those when we talk about AI in a moment. Low code is the other version. That's just for developers. I won't spend any time on that. But if you are looking for, cheap and cheerful ways to try and maximize the productivity of your development, your internal development team, then you can have a little look at things like DraftBit and Retool, and they allow you to accelerate the process of application development and development in general. So benefits for charities of no-code tools. They're really quite straightforward. So it's very, very quick to develop something using no-code tools. Say you wanted to create an online service where you're allowing people to look for their local specialist for a particular thing. You could create that in a matter of hours. We're not talking about week-long development processes here. It can be set up incredibly quickly. They're also very, very cheap. And so when I say quick as well, that can also be done by one person. That's by one person in a matter of hours. They're incredibly cheap. So they typically run in the $20 to $50 a month kind of range, these no-code tools. Some of them are an awful lot cheaper than that. Some of them start to get really quite expensive, but most of them are really, really cheap. And they're incredibly powerful. I mean, they can add real tangible benefits to an organization straight away, particularly in terms of products and services, or if you're trying to streamline your workflow. If you're doing lots and lots of administrative tasks, you can use these tools to automate a hell of a lot of it. And you don't need a big team of developers to do it. You can do it yourself. So lots of benefits. But where I think it gets really, really interesting, he said, quick checking at the time, is where we start to combine some of these no-code tools with the latest generation of generative AI, because they complement each other extremely well. Some examples. Now, I haven't got time to do loads of these, but I'm going to look mainly at Zapier and how Zapier as an integration and automation tool can work with generative AI in order to deliver real benefits to an organization very quickly, very cheaply. If I've got time, I'll talk about advanced data analysis with GPT because I just did some very, very recently for an organization on their donor database, and it was revealing. So creating custom workflows inside your organization in order to streamline things, stop you doing the repetitive over and over daily tasks that just eat into your life when you could be doing something better with your time, something much more effective. So these are normally around the following areas. So things like automatic transcription of voice or audio, generating and processing content, specifically editing and producing imagery, translation, if you have to appeal to a multilingual audience, which I'm sure many of you do, you can automate a lot of that process. Research, finding out things, you can automate an awful lot of this too. And then general day-to-day management of how you and your team work together. There's an awful lot that can be done with code tools for automation using generative AI. So I'll just have a look at the transcription case here. So this is an example. If you go into something like Zapier, you will see lots of things like this. This is a little screen grab of a recipe. And a recipe really just describes how one bit of software is going to work with another bit of software. So this one is called Create Transcripts of Audio Files with OpenAI's Whisper. So what you would have here is, say you've recorded an audio file. Let's say, for example, it's the audio file from this webinar. And automatically save it to a location on our file system. Now, that could be Dropbox, as in this example, or it could be Google Drive, it could be iCloud, it could be SharePoint, whichever system you're using. When that file lands in that folder, then a no-code tool can be looking to see is something in that folder, is something new. As soon as it is, it picks up that file, it automatically transcribes it, so it takes out all of the audio and turns it into text, and then creates a new text file and drops it back into that same directory. It does the whole thing automatically. Now, what that means is you have, particularly when generative AI is brought into the picture, you have a number of additional things that can happen, which enhance your organization. So being able to create automatic meeting notes. I don't know if any of you have to spend lots of time typing up meeting notes or saying, this is what happened. But if you've got a meeting going on, whether it's in real life or remote, you can automatically create meeting notes. Have them turned into text, have them automatically associated with any kind of content that was shared in that meeting, and excuse me, circulated to the right people. I'm using Otter as an example here. So Otter is a service, an off-the-shelf service that you can buy that allows you to process audio into text. And a lot of these features are available inside Otter. What I'm trying to show you, though, is that you can use no-code tools and generative AI very, very simply in order to create a customized version of just the elements that you want. So once you've got your meeting transcripts, you can automatically query them. So say somebody is late to the meeting, or say somebody is looking at the results of the last exec team meeting, for example, you can just, using a chat interface, ask that transcript some questions. What were the main things that were discovered? What are the main highlights from that meeting? Who's following up on this next action? What's the overall summary of where we're going in the next quarter? You can automate next actions. So because generative AI understands the context of what is being said, where people have been assigned an action or a next step, generative AI can identify that automatically and then let that person know, or add it to the shared to-do system if you're using that, or an issue tracker like Jira or something if you're using those kinds of tools. So you can have a meeting, have it automatically transcript, allow people to get summaries and the key actions, and automatically assign roles and responsibilities for next actions to people. And there are some real tangible accessibility benefits to taking this approach as well. So if there's a couple of quotes here, which I won't read out just in the interest of time, but one of them is from a guy who's dyslexic working in the media, and he finds that being able to have a text version of some of these tools really helps. And then there's someone with a hearing impairment who's deaf, who finds taking meeting notes very, very difficult because of the sound of lots of voices talking, keyboards tapping, etc. This really helps. That's an example of what you can do with basic no-code tools for about $20 a month, combined with generative AI. And it suddenly takes a huge burden off people that are trying to do some of these jobs in a manual way, and allows people to focus on doing more valuable tasks inside the organization. I generally see admin, and this is a very personal point of view, as a total waste of resources, because you can automate the admin and focus your talent on other things. I haven't got much time left, so I might speed up a little bit just with some basic examples. Content, you can automatically create a whole series of articles if you like, pairing no-code tools and generative AI. Say you've got input from some of your supporters, and you've been capturing that input in a spreadsheet, you can use that spreadsheet to automatically generate a whole series of different articles from each of those ideas in the spreadsheet. Similarly with images, if you're having a discussion, maybe in Teams, and you're saying, oh, I wonder if we, how long would it take us to get some visuals to see how this particular thing would work? You can just take this particular thing, hit a little button beside that item in your chat, and automatically create a whole range of different images that visualize that thing. I won't go into loads of these. Translation, again, you can automatically translate stuff. So if you need to have Welsh content, for example, or Farsi or whatever, you can just drop your content in one place and have it automatically converted to a range of different languages, and then have the translation added directly to a spreadsheet. Now, because of no-code tools that permit automation, you could then go a step further and say, well, okay, well, once we've got a Welsh translation in this particular spreadsheet, then add it to our content management system for our website and publish it. So lots of efficiencies to be gained there. Research, I've alluded to this already. If you're using something like Typeform or SurveyMonkey, you can automatically take those longhand responses, you know, the verbatim boxes where people are kind of giving you a paragraph of text, send it off to something like Monkey Learn, which is a machine learning tool, or send it off to ChatGPT, have it all analyzed and turned into a summary, which is then dumped in a spreadsheet with a chart saying 25% of people are talking about this topic, 8% are talking about this, 95% want this now. And then management. This is where things start to help you, particularly say if you're working on the marketing side and you're trying to come up with a content calendar. Maybe you're using Trello and you're emailing things back and forth to each other. You can automate the process of the creation of new Trello cards from decisions that are taken in an email thread, for example, or vice versa. You can prioritize something in Trello and then let everybody who needs to know what their task is next. Oh, I've really run out of time. I will skip over this. So yes, the summary, summary of the benefits of some of these tools. They're very, very quick. They're very, very cheap, incredibly powerful. They can be if used well and only require basic skills. Things to consider though, it's not a silver bullet. Nothing ever is. I mean, I've made it sound really good, maybe overly technical, but it's fairly technical. It's not a silver bullet. First of all, there are so many different options out there. I mean, there are thousands of different no-code tools. So knowing which one to pick, that can be a problem in its own right without doing lots of experimentation. But I would encourage you to talk to me. Just give me a shout and I'll be able to point you in the right direction and say, oh, have a look at this one, this one, and this one. There's a kind of 80-20 rule as well in terms of what you can do with these tools. It's really easy to get 80% of what you want done using no-code tools. But it's that final 20% that things start to get more complicated if you want to change them. So especially around customization. So if you want to customize the user interface or customize the user experience, actually, we want this thing down here. And actually, after they've done this, we want them to be able to go over to here. Some no-code tools might not give you all the flexibility that you want in order to be able to truly, fully customize everything. That's where a 20% specialist is really, really helpful. They can help you scope exactly how this system should work in the first place. And then they can help you customize that 20% that you can't actually do without technical skills, but you can go a long way on your own. Data is always a consideration. Anything that's connected to the internet, just check for encryption. Almost all no-code tools have very, very strong encryption in place because their entire business model depends on it, but just double check. And check for regional compliance too. You might have some of them which are more US based, and so they'll be appealing to legislation there. Just want to check that they are adhering to our regional legislation, particularly with things like the Digital Markets Act coming up next year. I'll brush over ethics for now, as we've only got 5 minutes left. That's a whole topic in its own right. The short story here really is if you're going to be using these automated tools to create, I don't know, say a range of different images of, I don't know, people in distress or versions of a photo shoot that you did, you have to make sure that you're treading that ethical tightrope. Look for permission, don't be exploitative. There's a whole list of things. If you look at the Anthropic website, I think I've mentioned this before, Anthropic have got a really good one-page constitution for things you should consider if you want to use AI ethically. The Anthropic constitution, just search for that. Last thing really to note is that you need some kind of conductor for this. You don't want 47 different people across your organization, all creating different versions of the same tool, because things will get absolutely chaotic. Now, I would suggest if you have an IT department, that it's somebody in IT who is that conductor, because they will probably have a really good overview of all the different tools that you already have. You don't want to be duplicating functionality. But make sure you document the system. I've seen this happen before. As soon as you start getting into automation, it's really handy to have a diagram that just shows, well, this bit of information goes here, this bit of information goes here. Because then when you're building on it over time or changing things, it's much easier. What next? Before Q&A, which is always going to be short, it's valuable to think about, what are the opportunities for generative AI and automation inside your organization? And something we've been doing with our clients recently, or some of them anyway, because most of them seem to have an exec mandate to explore automation and generative AI at the moment, is we've been doing really short 2-hour workshops with them. So we've been getting 10 people from their team, maximum of 10, otherwise it gets a little bit chaotic. And these tend to be drawn from various different parts of the organization, not just from fundraising, but from operations, etc. And then we take about 2 hours, been doing it remote and in person, and exploring what the true benefits are for this specific organization. And we've been just charging 300 quid. That's really just to cover our costs. So if you're interested in finding out a bit more about that workshop and you might like one for your organization, please just send me an email at phil.dearson@wpnc.agency. I'll leave this on the screen. Right, Q&A. I've left my email on the screen as well. Let's have a look. Well, if you've got any questions that I can cover off in the next 3 minutes, please do let me know. There's one here already. Would Power Automate fall under the no-code tools you just described? And if so, would you recommend we explore it or go straight to Zapier? It's a great question. And yes, so Power Automate is exactly one of those no-code tools. It's very, very similar to Zapier. One of the things I have noticed, though, with Power Automate is that it's much more limited in terms of the things it can connect together. So while Zapier might be able to connect about 1,000 different services together, Power Automate specializes in doing things inside the Microsoft suite of products, which is fine. If all of your interactivity and functionality, if all your products and services are operating inside that Microsoft ecosystem, then yeah, absolutely explore Power Automate first, because I don't think there's any extra cost for it if you've already got a 365 subscription, but I'm not sure about that. Any other questions? Like it. Okay, well, thanks very much for your time. If you'd like a copy of this document, just email me. If you'd like some information about exactly what that workshop entails, then please just email me. It's phil.dearson. I feel like I'm on an advert now. phil.dearson@wpnc.agency. Anyway, thank you very much for your time. Have a good day. Bye now.